Good afternoon, buenas tardes. I appreciate those who can join. I know there's an option of sessions today, so thank you for choosing mine and sticking around till the bitter end. I need to be honest, I'm getting over a terrible cold, so apologies if I choke up. It's not me getting overexcited about data, but it's probably my man flu getting over that. Before I formally start, if I may ask, can I take a photo of you and me, of us? Is that okay? Okay. Thank you very much. I will tweet this. I won't tag you, though, I promise. Okay, very important that you smile. Oh. Let's see how that looks. Not too bad. Another reason, I send this to my mother. She loves getting these things, but she still doesn't know what the hell I do, if I'm very honest. So she'll be totally confused again about when I'm talking about tweets at these conferences. So without further ado, again, great to be here. Thanks to the Paradigma team for the invitation to come and speak. I have always been amazed at the ability of a single tweet to be an incredible force for change in this world, to inspire, to give hope, to speak truth to power. A single tweet, just 140 characters, can provide an amazing amount of insight into our world. Insight that touches just about every aspect of our lives. And if a single tweet can do that, imagine 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000. Imagine the 500 million tweets that are sent each day, every day, around the world. We always ask the question, what's possible when you know what the whole world is thinking about any topic at any time? What would you do with that kind of insight? What questions would you ask of that corpus of text? How could that help inform your decision-making? The promise of big data is immense, but what is the story behind the data points? Where's the explanation for why things are the way they are? In a world of sensors and Internet of Things, what are people actually thinking and sharing, expressing? What do people think about the new iPhone 6? Actually, iPhone 7, I think, is the new iPhone. I'm a year behind. Why is gluten-free become such a trend or a craze? What are the impacts of Brexit to the UK and to Europe? Why is Donald Trump the president-elect? Sorry. We're asking ourselves that question a lot. Today, I want to talk about a large data set, a big data set, Twitter data, which is the largest publicly available searchable archive of human-generated thought that has ever existed. And I want to talk about why we feel it has unlimited value and near limitless applicability. I want to briefly share a few case studies, a couple use cases. I'll talk briefly about the suite of APIs we have that can support you and developing community. And I guess ultimately, I want to express our view that Twitter data has such a powerful ability to inform because of the very nature of Twitter itself. It's open by default, it's real time, and it's what's happening.
What's happening? What's happening in the world? What's everyone talking about? What's trending? How did it start?
We must love each other and protect each other.
When will it end?
I wanna know, hey, hey, hey.
See what's happening in the world right now.
Where do we go from hey, hey, hey.
All right. If that didn't wake you up, nothing will. It's better than espresso. So back to that question I posed earlier. Please come in. Feel free to have a seat. No worries. What's possible when you know what the whole world is thinking about any topic at any time? What could you do with that? Well, let me give you some ideas. The first, trend analysis. When we think about trend analysis, we typically think about two different things, break it into two. One is long-term trends, looking at a time series and trying to understand what's going on. And the other is event detection, more of a real-time alerting type use case. So looking at the long-term trend analysis, you see here that thankfully healthy food has overtaken junk food in discussion topics. That's probably good for all of humanity. And what we've done here is we've gone back about 6 years. Easy peasy, right? Well, one of the challenges in looking at time series data is understanding, has the audience who are talking about these topics actually changed? So challenges around normalizing the data becomes very important. Issues of homogeneity. Okay. Another important point here, I guess, while I'm on this slide, is two different ways we could look at trend analysis. One is a top-down, and the other is sort of a bottom-up approach to primary research and analysis. So the top-down basically says we have a specific topic we want to dive into. Excuse me, I told you that may come. And we want to go out and we want to pull in many years of data on that specific topic and analyze it. A great example would be, say Coca-Cola wants to understand, tell me what's being said about cola in the past 3 or 4 years. Now, they may not be searching specifically for cola, but for topics or words that are analogous to cola, soda, and you name it. That's an example of top-down. You clearly know what you're looking for, and you're going to go out and pull in that corpus of text and do that kind of analysis. Bottom-up, a little bit trickier. Bottom-up is about it's a broad view of a specific high-level topic, let's say food. Now, if someone says, what's happening in the world of food? Well, where do you start, right? There's different types of food. There's all kinds of terminology. That's a great example of a bottom-up, where you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. You don't know what the conversations are going to be until you actually just dive in. And this is where some of the things around NLP and machine learning, the ability to cluster topics becomes very important, okay, as an aid. So on that bottom-up view again, it's interesting. So you see here dairy, gluten, and paleo tracking up. The two slides, the slide prior, the junk food and the healthy food, these are the same study. They were about food. And this client said, we really want to know what's going on with food. And so from that point, we dove in, and it was analysis. Clearly two things came out of that. There's big discussions around health-related food and junk food. From that led us to these three guys, okay? I guess within the healthy food, you could argue. Dairy, gluten, and paleo. People know what paleo is. It's this crazy diet. Well, I shouldn't say it's crazy, but it's the diet our ancestors would have lived on. Anything you can kill with a stick, or fish, fruit you can pluck from a tree, that sort of thing. So from food to health and junk food to dairy, gluten, and paleo. And this client would never have thought about understanding paleo. And what does that mean to them? Also interesting to look at the data to try to make some sense of it. You can see the blue lines are the end of the year there. And you see this giant spike every year with people, New Year's resolutions, wanting to get in shape, and then it peters out 3 months later, and people are like, we've had enough of that. So I've talked about top-down and bottom-up. A huge important point here is looking at Twitter as the pulse of the planet, being able to understand whether it's food, transport, entertainment, you name it, it's out there. People are discussing it, and they're sharing their views. Finally, that second trend analysis use case I talked about was event detection. Okay, this is less about the overall volume of topics, but more what's changed in a short order of time about that topic. In this case, Coca-Cola they came out with a festive can for the holiday season, the polar bears there, which looks great. Unfortunately, when people went into the store and purchased these cans, they thought they were buying Diet Coke because it looks like Diet Coke, right? That's actually a traditional classic cola. So they got home, they drank, and they thought, well, Coca-Cola's changed the recipe again. And they took to Twitter to complain. Because Coca-Cola was monitoring this, because they had systems in place, they were able to pick up on this and to avert any kind of PR issues or any other disappointed customers. So again, great example there of event detection. They were less concerned about the specific topics around Coca-Cola, what's being discussed, but more about the fact that something has changed from the norm, what's normally trending. So what's another thing that you can do with Twitter data? More focus for your focus groups. So focus groups, questionnaires, surveys have been a great way to get feedback, and they still certainly have a place. Some of the challenges with them are the time to create them, to send them out, to get the data back, to analyze that, the cost involved. We worked with one client who were able to get, who were doing some primary research on some of their product categories, and they were able to get 80% of their initial questions answered looking out into the Twitter sphere. And that 80% was huge amounts, I mean, a much greater sample size. So instead of tens or hundreds of answers, responses, they're able to get thousands and tens of thousands. And instead of the typically 5, 6, 7 months it can take sometimes to deal with focus groups, they're able to do that in a matter of weeks. I think there's an important point here to think about Twitter as the world's largest focus group. Again, this idea that people are talking about anything and everything out there. Now, before I move on, I do want to be clear to anybody who does a lot of this stuff. We don't see Twitter data as a replacement for focus groups, but we think it can supplement it quite well. It can be quite directional. It can allow you to get prepared then when you go into a focus group or for a survey that you're going to be sending out. And the final use case here is Twitter as a way to deliver better customer service, to do it more efficiently, more effectively, at a lower cost, and to help resolve real customer issues quicker, but also providing important feedback back to the business. For audience participation, is anyone here, if you could raise your hand, who all has reached out to a brand on Twitter in the past few months with a question or problem? Okay, we got 4, that's not bad. I was going to ask how many actually got a response. With a sample size of 4, it's not going to be a very good indicator of what actually happened. But studies we've done say that only about 1 in 5, 1 in 4 folks who reach out to a brand on Twitter actually get a response, which is pretty amazing. If someone walked into your store, would you ignore them? If the phone rang, would you not pick it up? There's a huge opportunity here for brands to engage with customers, and that's being missed. And it's even more amazing, confusing, that we know that Twitter and social media in general amplifies your voice, whether that's a positive comment about a brand or a negative one. Amy here, poor Amy, first world problems. They have no black tea in the Starbucks. Okay, some of the numbers here, by the way, really depend on the number of followers you have, so I don't want to go into too much detail on the actual multiplicative effect here, but you can see how Starbucks Help responds, which is very nice of them. They ask her to get in touch, some store info, and she responds back, fantastic, you know, thank you for getting in touch. So that meant a lot to her, and it means a lot to me when I'm tweeting at somebody for help, and they do take the time to respond, and hopefully with some helpful information. So, excuse me. So again, very important to think about how you're missing opportunities to resolve customer issues, but also to amplify the great things that you're doing. Other amazing thing is the fact that social customer care is here to stay. In the US, about 50 million people a month use social to reach out to brands. Okay, that's a I guess 1 in 6 of the U.S., growing at about 100%. So the ship has set sail. It is certainly happening. And the benefit is quite clear, at least to the brand. If you look at traditional channels, phone or email, social is much cheaper to resolve. And one of the reasons it's cheaper to resolve is because it's more efficient. It takes less time to deal with. And because of the public nature, oftentimes it can solve other people's questions and concerns. But not only is it cheaper to deliver, there's revenue potential there. And I won't harp on this too long, but some of the studies we've done have highlighted people are willing to spend more when they've received good customer service on Twitter. So the price elasticity is increased. Airlines, 3%, up to 20%. You may say, well, 3%, but in industries where margins are very low, that can be hugely impactful for them. And finally, on customer care, I think one of the most important reasons is almost going back to the brief use case on focus groups is, depending on the statistic you look at, 20-25% of people would respond to any kind of survey or questionnaire that's sent. So it can be very difficult for an organization to get feedback on their products and services. What we've seen with using some of our customer care-related technologies that we've built in, DM prompts and whatnot, about 60% response rate. So it's a great way, in the moment, you've resolved somebody's complaint, hopefully, and by the way, could you tell us how we're doing, or give us feedback? So an amazing way to get feedback that feeds back into the product development cycle of your business, thinking about how you deal with customers, whether that's digitally or in store. So I've flown through 3 case studies there. Twitter as the pulse of the planet. Twitter is the world's largest focus group, and Twitter is a great way to deliver good customer service and learn something about your customers, your products, and the market in general along the way. You can see the possibilities here are endless. We feel like we haven't scratched the surface of the uses for Twitter data. And I say we, I actually mean you, because we are very much the plumbers. Our intent is to get you the data you need so that you can do innovative things with this data. The data is there. It's there every day, 500 million tweets of it. But we love seeing innovative things happening around supply chain, logistics, risk management, customer service, you name it. So the 3 use cases I mentioned briefly, very much focused on the tweet itself, the 140 characters. And there is a heck of a lot of insight there. But what about the metadata that goes around a tweet that's behind the scenes? We always say that a tweet is more than just 140 characters. In fact, it's about 150 different pieces of metadata, really rich contextual information that provides context for that tweet. And you can see there, it's things around location, clout score, the operating system of the device, the URLs, which we can unwind, and you can understand more about what people are sharing, and it goes on and on. And you see here on the right, you see the typical tweet, enjoyed our half-price chicken and waffles, a couple mentions, a hashtag, photo, tagged themselves in Texas. But what that really looks like in JSON format, JavaScript object notation, is this. And this is where you really see some of the interesting things that we have that you can pull out, again, to help you find the right tweets, but also to add context and meaning to those. I'm not going to walk through this line by line, don't worry. I'm going to pick out a few things in there. Image attached, there's a bio summary of the individual. Friends and followers count. Stated location. Twitter for Android is the operating system of the device. But finally, the body of the text. So GPS coordinates turned on. So only about 2% of tweets have geolocation. We offer some enrichments, which you can take that to about 35 to 40%. Aren't you glad I didn't go through every line of that payload? So that was behind the scenes with a tweet. But actually, how do you get access? If you're a developer sitting in the room and thinking, I wonder if Twitter data would complement what we're doing. It's not the only way. It's one of many external data sources that are out there. But if we wanted to bring in Twitter data to complement what we're doing, how would we do that? I'll take a 30-second water break here. I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. 2 quick points relating to the payload there, the metadata field. So if, putting aside for a moment the actual tweet itself, the 140 characters, what if we pulled out just 2 of those fields? What could we do? What could we do with that? Well, if we pulled out the operating system, the mobile device that sent the tweet, and we pulled out the coordinates, the XY coordinates, you could do a nice map. Probably recognize that city. And here you can see Manhattan is quite red. That's iPhone. A lot of Android in New Jersey. I'm always amazed to see BlackBerry in Midtown there. On its own, these 2 pieces of data on this image may not mean a whole lot, but imagine what you could build on top of it. Okay, imagine what could be inferred with other data points that you have. External data sources, weather, point of sales data that you have. This is kind of the foundational stuff, we think, for your data exploration. Here's the slide I thought I was coming to. Yeah, so how can Twitter help you guys with some of your research projects and tools that you're building? 3 main areas, all of which have public endpoints, which you can go hit now and retrieve data. The real time, that's the ability to plug into the so-called fire hose, create some basic keywords and things that you can then extract from that 500 million tweets a day. And the GNIP side, power track, you can create thousands of rules, keywords and or together, positive, negative clauses, using some of those filters I showed, and find those needles in the haystack. So if someone said, well, I want to know, I was in Barcelona a few weeks ago, I want to know people talking about Estrella Damm in Barcelona, you can draw a bounding box around Barcelona, search only within that, and you want to know only from tweets that come from Android devices, and have a clout score of X, and more than 1,000 followers. So you can really make complex rules to find tweets that are valuable, that are important to you. Historical, then, is basically just the ability to go back to the beginning of time, the beginning of Twitter. Was that March 1st, 2006, I think it was? Actually, someone will correct me, that's not right. It's March 2006. Going back in those 10 years and doing that kind of time series analysis that I discussed earlier. And finally, the insights. One of the questions we get a lot is, this tweet payload is really insightful. We don't even know what's going on, but can you tell us anything about the people themselves, the users, demographics, interests? Well, that's when we came up with the new audience API, and that basically is delivering demographics and interests for collection of Twitter users. That's things like age, gender, location, operating system, wireless carrier, and things like that. So that allows you to understand about people that are talking about certain topics, and what characteristics may that group have. A couple other things in there which I won't go into. I think it's just important to say that these three buckets, if you will, tend to work well together and complement one another. So the ability to do a search on a topic and then use the historical to go back and say, I wonder how long this has been going on. What's the history of this look like? Then the ability to take that group, say 1,000 people have been talking about gluten-free, the ability to take those 1,000 handles, push them into the audience API, and get a better understanding, is that a more male or more female? Do they tend to have interests that are in certain areas? Why do they all like fishing or baseball or beer or whatever it may be? So that's how those three things can come together to provide insight for you. Historically, we have worked with a huge amount of developers, and that's everything from 2 people and a dog and a cat in a garage up into the the IBMs, the Salesforces, the Adobes, and really everything in between. That ecosystem, as we call it, really drives innovation. They work with a lot of end customers to understand specific needs that they have. They pull in the data from us, again, as the plumbers, and they make some sense of that, and then they help their end customers, which is fantastic. And this is the world's longest build slide. I should have stopped this before. Increasingly, we're seeing brands, organizations come to us direct with their needs, and I think that's because this whole idea of big data and data science is evolving. Companies are realizing that data is important, that they've got it in different places. It needs to be brought together and better understood. So the ability to do giant regression analysis on different data points. We're seeing companies now who are hiring their first chief data officer and really building up a data science competency so they can understand the world around them better. So historically we worked with ecosystem, but now we're working a lot more with brands. So many ways we can work with you and support you. I guess finally, to close, I've talked a lot about the fact that just about any question you may have is probably out there in the Twitter sphere, covering just about any topic. We take great pride at Twitter in being a platform that shows sides but doesn't take sides. Okay, it's a forum for people to share, even if maybe you don't like some of the things that are being shared out there, whether that's in issues around politics, the environment, immigration, diversity, safety, security, rights, health, women's rights. There is something out there for everyone. And we love the chance to work with you in the development community. Lots of tools, and if you go to twitter.developer.com, you'll find all kinds of things that can get you started. In closing, a big thank you for listening. Thanks for having me, and thanks for making Twitter what it is for the last 10 years.
I think he said he was going in the Hudson.
I am using Twitter to send pictures from space.
Germany are the champions of the world!
And for all rights, for women's rights.
Today marks 6 months since our Chibok girls were taken from their school.
Very nice, very impressive. Thank you. So, questions, please? All right, very good. Second row.
Hi. I have two related questions. The first one is how in Twitter you face the challenge of creating topics. I mean, how you know that some tweets belongs to, two tweets belong to the same topic. And related to that question is that if you are having any problem in having that bunch of tweets that you don't know how to categorize. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So how we've categorized tweets, and then I think you're talking about at replies as well. Is that, do I have that correct? Yeah. Well, a couple things that, I mean, I guess it's, being honest, there's some things that, there are some challenges out there that we have chosen not to deal with and let the ecosystem work on. If you use Twitter today, you'll go into moments and you'll see some things that are trending that we've kind of curated. I mean, I mean, I guess the honest answer is we have algorithms that pick up what's topical. If you go into your app, you can see what's trending. So I'm not sure I won't go into the detail on how the algorithms actually work, and that's not actually my area of specialty anyway, if I'm very honest. In terms of the at replies, in the payload there, you'll see the reply to the original tweet, and then there's a little bit of work to be done to patch that in. So, you know, if you look at Facebook, for instance, they do a nice visual job of nested comments. So you can reply to the original post, or you can reply to someone who's replied, and it's nested quite neatly. So it's a little bit different. Tweets can go out by themselves. They can be, they do go out by themselves, and they can be a reply to something that you'd look at and you wouldn't necessarily know the context to. So that's something we've been thinking about in development efforts, is how to make that a little bit more logical when you do want to go back and understand how a conversation has unfolded. But from a technical perspective, a little bit of detective work and matching up the tweet IDs. Hopefully that answers your question. Excuse me again.
Any other question? Joe, so basically the advertising business model of Twitter has been changing in the last 2 years, maybe. Probably trying things, and there's been some interesting developments. Can you tell us, out of all the revenue of Twitter, at least in your domain, how much of data as a service or the access to the firehose represents?
Sure.
Even if it's a tiny fraction, or how do you see that developing versus the advertising source of revenue?
Yeah, it's a good point. At the end of the day, Twitter is an advertising company. Let's make no mistake there, just as Facebook and other social platforms. But we do have this kind of handy thing, which is the exhaust fumes of Twitter, which is all these tweets that have value. And I sit on that team, the data licensing team, or GNIP. So our concern is not about advertising at all, but insight, and working with people to get insight about the world around them from all these tweets. We do, if you look at our quarterly announcements, we do break out data, which is a little less than 10%, but a substantial portion of Twitter, and growing.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
I believe that you also are interested in growing the ecosystem of vendors, agencies, and software providers getting the data from Twitter and building platforms around it. I guess that's also a very...
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I want to always be very humble. We don't invent the clever ideas with the data. It's the group here in front of me. And so, you know, now we're seeing really amazing things coming around predictive intelligence. You know, can you predict via tweets if a film is going to be a box office hit or a dud? And was that valuable? Well, cinema chains, I understand, need to make decisions weeks in advance about how many theaters to show a film, when to cut it off. So you can just see, where this goes in a whole host of fields. So absolutely, we love to see new use cases, as long as it meets our terms and conditions, of course. And again, I have this opportunity, I shall say, most of the research and the innovation you see is looking at Twitter data in the aggregate. We don't like Twitter data being used to target individuals or groups of individuals based on identifiable characteristics, gender, sexual orientation, religious affiliation, political affiliation, you name it. We want to be an open platform people can share and not worry about being targeted for a variety of reasons.
Right. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. So, there's a very last question, yes? Is Ram?
A quick question on the value of the information that you can generate from tweets, rather. Have you seen similar interest from the enterprise segment on other Twitter assets like Periscope and whatever there is, in terms of adding more value, more color and flavor to the insights?
Yeah, sometimes people ask me, what's the value of the data? I mean, I probably ask them, well, what do you think it's worth? You remember the Samsung phones were exploding, the batteries, I guess, were. What's the value of a tweet that told them that we've got an issue from the very beginning, so they could take corrective action, pull those products? That specific tweet was probably worth a lot to them in that example. So I think there's immense value, but it depends on what you're doing, your industry, your focus, as to how much value you look at the data. As to things, other assets we have, like Periscope, the streaming, Periscope's the live streaming app. I don't know if I'm on Periscope right now or not. Maybe I am. So somebody's put me up there, maybe. We don't have an API as of yet for that, to support that kind of data interrogation, but that may come down the road. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you very much, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.